Hi, Miguel here, and this is going to be my video series on Pokémon Adventures. Today we're doing Volume 1, for those of you who are wondering, right now I'm doing my current, main series on the Naruto series, which I've been doing on a daily basis. I might actually, by the time this is uploaded, I might actually start another series alongside that. I figured a fun thing to do every once in a while would be to look back on some of the media that I experienced when I was younger and see how they've evolved or how they've translated into my adulthood or how they've changed over time, how my view of them has changed over time. And Pokémon Adventures is something that I did read as a kid. I loved it. I thought it was the definitive Pokémon storyline. I watched the anime when I was younger, and I played the games, but I always found the games a lot more fascinating than the anime. Like, the first season of the anime I think was really good, but after that I think it just, it was very by the book. So when I first read the Pokémon Adventures manga, I was like, this is something new, this is something different, this is something that the anime was never able to do. It appeals to kids, and it also manages to include a lot of dark elements in it, dark storytelling that really makes the world of Pokémon feel a lot more real than it did in the anime. But that's my perspective as a kid. Going back to this as an adult, I can kind of see a few flaws. I still like it. I still really do like the characters and the Pokemon, but I can see a few flaws that emerge. So let's jump right into it. Our protagonist in the first volume of Pokémon Adventures, because I do remember there were multiple protagonists throughout the volumes. Our first protagonist is Red. Anyone who's familiar with Pokemon might know him as the guy atop Mount Silver. But Red, in this case, is very much... He is very similar to Ash from the anime in that he wants to become the best Pokemon trainer around. He wants to catch all the different species of Pokemon, and he wants to... something different from Ash. He wants to fill out the Pokédex. By the time he completes the Pokédex, he will have become one of the greatest Pokemon trainers of all time. Based on what we've seen in the book so far, I do like Red. I'm not entirely crazy about him. He does have his differences to Ash, he is a little too similar. Like, I've seen this, I remember this character being a lot more incredible when I was a kid with seeing this representation of the character that I played as in the game. But he seems to be a bit more generic than I remember him being, because he's very set on his goal, and he's not willing to give up that goal, and it's a typical protagonist sort of thing, especially coming out of Naruto, who has a similar personality, especially right off the get-go. Things get a little more interesting when his rival Blue enters the picture, whom you guys might remember as the rival from the first Pokemon games. Blue is very different from the other representations of Blue. Like, Gary in the anime is a representation of Blue, but he maintains that cocky personality that Blue has in the games. And while Blue in the Pokemon Adventures manga is also very cocky, he also has an aloof side of him that emerges whenever Red upstages him. And this is, I think, where Red becomes a little more interesting, especially because his interactions with Blue show exactly how... It shows him develop. He starts off very cocky, Red does, and then when he encounters Blue, and he is upstaged by Blue, and Blue, sticks his nose up at him, Red suddenly realizes, I need to become a better Pokemon trainer. I need to become the very best. I need to become better, basically. And that makes the interactions between Red and Blue very interesting, because whenever Red upstages Blue, Blue becomes aloof. Blue doesn't want to admit that he needs to learn more, and that makes him a lot cockier the next time he encounters Red, because he wants to show Red, I'm still better than you. Meanwhile, Red has a much more direct way of showing that he maintains that rivalry with Blue, by getting visibly very upset at Blue, but very happy whenever he's able to get the upper hand over him. But the aloof nature of Blue actually really infuriates Red. So it's very interesting to see these two work off of each other. And they do work off of each other a lot in the Pokemon Adventures manga, at least in the first volume. As opposed to like when Ash and Gary interact in the anime, they don't interact very much. It's very similar, I suppose, to how the games wanted you to visualize, you know, your interactions with Blue, because like every time you meet Blue, it's like, oh, you again. Like he's being cocky. He's like, I'm gonna totally defeat you this time. So it's very interesting to see the two interact with each other, and I think that both of their characters are strengthened with the other being around. That said, the first volume of Pokemon Adventures doesn't establish the threat right away. Team Rocket doesn't really have that big of a role. They pop in here and there as, you know, obstacles for Red and Blue to overcome. They pop in first in Mount Moon when Misty is trying to recapture her Gyarados after it had been experimented on by Team Rocket, and Red and Misty team up to actually fight Team Rocket in that bit. And what's interesting in this volume is, and I remember finding this interesting when I was a kid as well. Some of the gym leaders are actually evil, and spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't played Pokemon yet, but one of the gym leaders in the original games, Giovanni, is evil. He is the head of Team Rocket. But in the Pokemon Adventures volume, we have more gym leaders who turn out to be criminals. We have Lieutenant Surge, who steals Pokemon and puts them on the SSN to be shipped elsewhere, and to, you know, free them, I suppose, and make them evolve, make them more powerful for his own, you know, for his own nefarious purposes. And we also have Koga, who is actually a member of Team Rocket in this version. Red encounters him twice. The first time we don't actually know it's Koga. He encounters him in Mount Moon. And he encounters him again in Lavender Town, where he is manipulating the corpses of Pokemon in order to make the villagers think that the tower is haunted, and therefore making it an ideal base for Team Rocket, because no one's going to bother them in that tower. But Red, Blue, and Misty continually find ways to defeat Team Rocket at every turn. Excuse me. But we do see the one thing that I will give Team Rocket in this one, in this volume at the very least, is we do see just how diabolical they are. As opposed to like the Team Rocket in the anime, who's kind of pathetic but still really funny, and the Team Rocket in the games, who we do see them do bad stuff, but we don't see a lot of them. We see Team Rocket do a lot of bad stuff in this one. We see Koga straight up inject a Rhyhorn with a serum that forces it to evolve, which we find very, like, it's deplorable. Like, right off the bat, Team Rocket is doing these really horrible things. They're not just stealing Pokemon, they're doing, like, these horrible things to Pokemon that really shouldn't be done. And that makes us really despise them a lot more, which makes them a lot stronger as villains in this version. This has to be my favorite version of Team Rocket in any media whatsoever. Even, like, I like the Team Rocket in the anime. They're funny, but that's all they've got going for them. They're funny and, like, nothing else. So, with that being said, we do see Red and Blue, like, they do go out, they do battle gym leaders, they do try to, you know, they do try to get all 8 badges, as is the goal in the games, and they are filling out their Pokedex. Interestingly enough, the Pokemon that they have very interesting personalities. I especially like Pikachu. Red's Pikachu, he meets in Pewter City. Pikachu, very similar to Pikachu in the first episode of the anime, Pikachu does not listen to Red at first. He's very stubborn, he's very headstrong, and he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to be with Red at all, basically. But, like, Red tries to reach out to Pikachu, like, can we just be friends? Like, can we please, like, work together, at least on this one? And it's very interesting to see their relationship evolve in the arc that Pikachu is met, because Red tries to use Pikachu to battle Brock. which is, by the way, a bad idea. I don't ever recommend it, because Brock is not a rock and ground type Pokemon trainer, so Pikachu wouldn't be very effective against them. Not effective at all, actually, in the new generations. But Pikachu actually disobeys Red all the time, so he's like, okay, I'm forced to use my other Pokemon, despite the fact that they're very low on health, but Pikachu, I can't keep doing this. You have to, you have to pull your weight. Now, we do see at some point Pikachu think like, oh, well, this person is trying his best. I might as well just win this battle for him. Besides, I might actually get really, really hurt if that happens. But despite that, Pikachu maintains that stubbornness throughout it in the future, even after the battle with Brock. Like, going into Mount Moon, Pikachu is very stubborn. Pikachu, he very reluctantly, like, lights up the cave. So it's very interesting to see, like, this relationship between Red and Pikachu slowly evolve throughout the course of this volume, and because I've read this before, I know that Pikachu does eventually warm up to Red, that he eventually becomes very, very much beloved by Red, and it's a very mutual relationship. Bulbasaur has a bit of an interesting arc at the beginning, in which we find out that Bulbasaur hadn't really been let out of the lab, out of Professor Oak's lab, which means it hasn't had very many interactions with living beings. And it actually also makes it a little bit resentful to the professor. So when Red comes up and comforts it, for the first time, a trainer showing that love and compassion to Bulbasaur, Bulbasaur becomes very much attracted to Red. And that affection is something that it's a way of building Red's capability of being good with his Pokemon, because he is capable of maintaining that affection with his Pokemon, and that's another big difference between Red and Blue at this point. Red, despite not being as good as Blue in the training department, he is very much able to connect with his Pokemon on an emotional level, and in doing so, earn their respect and earn their loyalty to him. Blue, meanwhile, is very much focused on becoming the best, making his Pokemon as strong as possible, and filling out that Pokedex as quickly as possible, which is why he's so aloof all the time. Which is why his Charmander, and which eventually becomes a Charmeleon, despite becoming a Charmeleon much faster than Red's Bulbasaur becomes an Ivysaur, it's still we still haven't seen him interact with his Charmeleon in the same way that Red interacts with his Pokemon. Which is it's a very interesting thing to note between Red and Blue in this case. Red is focusing on emotional connection to his Pokemon, while Blue is focusing on training. And I know where this is going. I know that the two are going to learn from each other in that department. Now, Red's Poliwhirl has an interesting arc as well. Various interesting things happen to Poliwhirl in this volume. We learned that Red's Poliwhirl used to be a Poliwag, but it actually evolved into a Poliwhirl to save Red from drowning at one point when he was younger. And so we know that Poliwhirl is already very much attached to Red, having been his very first Pokemon. At one point, Red is thrown into the sea along with Poliwhirl, and Poliwhirl actually evolves again to save him, in a similar vein to how he did when he was younger, evolving into a Poliwrath to save Red. And it's very interesting, like, to see Red's emotional connection to these Pokemon, especially how they evolve and how they change, and the various parallels, the various things that these Pokemon would do for their trainer because they love him so much. Pikachu getting there. Pikachu's getting there, I promise. So, yeah, the one thing I will say about this volume, and this is why I say that it's not as good as I remember it being, is the pacing is, like, it's too fast, especially in the first part of the volume, the first few chapters. Excuse me. I just finished recording a Naruto episode, so my voice is kind of down. But the pacing is it's not very good pacing, honestly. For the first few chapters of the volume, an entire arc might be contained in one single chapter. Like, Red's first encounter with Blue takes place all in one chapter. Red's first encounter with Bulbasaur takes place all in one chapter. Red's first encounter with Pikachu all in one chapter. And it goes by too quickly for you to really, like, feel the gravity of each battle. And I get it, like, battles are supposed to be, like, in real life, are supposed to be quick. They're supposed to end, you know, a lot quicker than they do. But here it just feels rushed. And it feels like more attention should have been paid to, you know, each battle, the consequences of each battle, the things that happen during each battle. I feel like if they had taken a bit more time, a lot more time, with each chapter, with, you know, with each arc that Red goes throughout these first few chapters, that I would have liked it a lot better. It gets better in the later chapters, with Red meeting Lieutenant Surge and Red going up against Koga, Red meeting Misty, that kind of thing. Because it devotes multiple chapters to each particular part of a story, which I enjoy a lot. I still think it can be a little rushed at times, but I'm glad that at the very least these arcs are taking up more chapters. And I get it, as a serialization, you want to keep readers coming back for more, so they would tend. I'm assuming they would probably, like, go through one entire chapter per issue, so readers can get an entire, you know, an entire adventure contained within that one chapter. I still feel that it's rushed, but I'm hoping, like, as I revisit the future Pokemon volumes from here on out, that we get to see more of the type of arc that isn't contained to just one chapter, that, you know, spans multiple chapters, that, you know, so that we can see more of these battles, that these battles can take place over a much less rushed period of time. So that's my one big gripe with this volume. It is a pretty big gripe, but I'm hoping that as I go forward, you know, we fix it. With that being said, I will see you guys for Volume 2.